An entitled jerk demands that I move my car as he claims that the public parking spot that I parked in was actually specifically reserved for him and his stupid Porsche. But after I ignored this man and decided to go about my day, he decided to try and block my car in its spot by putting down orange traffic cones to block my exit, claiming that he would call the police and have me arrested if I moved them. So I decided to get revenge by running them over and destroying them as I left. Here's what happened. Okay, so there's a cafe in my city that is a favorite spot for car enthusiasts. There's a sort of small car museum attached, and it's midway along a slow but scenic winding road. It's a great destination for car enthusiasts, as well as cyclists and residents of the upscale neighborhood that it's in. There are about 30 parking spots, and it's usually pretty busy. On the way back from a long drive, I pulled into the U-shaped drive alley, and luckily there was an empty spot right in front of the cafe doors. So I pulled in, and as I was getting out of the car, a newer turbo Cabria pulled up right behind me and put on its flashers. And for car enthusiasts, it was a black 997 automatic with a very large Porsche decal across the top of the windscreen, plus red Porsche decals on the door handles. The driver blipped the horn twice and motioned at me with his hands. I looked around thinking maybe I missed a handicap sign or pavement marking, but I didn't see anything around me. So I walked around the back of my car to check the pavement for the blue square, but nope, it was definitely a regular spot. As I was looking under the car, the door of the Porsche opened up, and a heavyset man with a thumb-shaped head and a circle beard and mustache extricated himself and said, "Sorry bud, you're in my spot, you gotta move." I said to him, "Excuse me?" And I looked around again, maybe thinking that this was reserved for staff, or maybe that this was the owner, but still, nothing was obviously marked about this parking spot. I said to him, "I don't understand." He said to me, "We're always here at noon on Saturday. We park up front in a row, see?" He then points to two other cars similar to his on either side of me. I said to him, "Sorry, is there an event going on here?" He then says to me, "No, we're just here every week at this point for our meetup. We park up front and this is my spot. You gotta move it along, buddy." Now, I'm still not ready to let the mask slip, but I'm starting to suspect that this is utter entitled BS. But I've been wrong before, so I just shrug and say, "Alright, I'm gonna go check with the staff, and if it's your spot, I'll definitely move." He then says to me, "Whoa, buddy, don't make a mistake like that. I'm not the one you want to get on the wrong side of." I now realize the extent of the nonsense he is playing at, and I'm in no way a tough guy, but I'm 25 years younger, a head taller, and this guy is pear or even gourd shaped and sweating from the effort of hauling himself out of his car. So I am not in the least intimidated. Plus, the cafe has floor to ceiling glass, so I can order my lunch and eat it, all with my car and its unscratched paintwork in full view. Plus, there are picnic tables with dozens of people sitting at them. I give him one last chance. I say to him, "How about I come get you when I'm ready to leave so you can have my spot? Because I won't be too long." He then looks at me and says, "Oh buddy, you're gonna regret this, I promise you." He then heaves himself back into his car and drives out to park along the road. And seriously, he was maybe 40 feet away. As I'm ordering my coffee, I see him storming back towards my car with his arms full of two traffic cones. He then slams down both cones behind my car, blocking me in the parking spot. With my car now coned off, he struts into the cafe and walks past me. He then wags his finger at me and says that if I touch his property, he's gonna go straight to the cops. Now, I honestly couldn't think of anything clever to say, so I just nodded and went back to my coffee and grilled cheese sandwich. He settled into a booth in the back with two other bearded, sweaty thumbs who alternated between staring at me and talking loudly but indistinctly in that raspy, gravelly way that sounds like they're about to clear their throat, but they never do. I spent the rest of my lunch racking my brain trying to think of what to do, but I was so thrown off by this weirdness that I couldn't come up with anything. Do I call the cops about some cones? Do I tell the staff? Do I even confront him? There was an open dumpster at the edge of the parking lot, but I figured he could be at my car quicker than I could get there and back. In the end, I just finished up, set my phone to video just in case I needed something to show to the cops, and I waited until there were no cars coming in or even going out so my exit was clear. So I stood up, I briskly walked out, got in my car, and I backed straight over those stupid cones and drove off, praying that neither of them got stuck in my wheel well. I only looked back once, but I did get the satisfaction of seeing two completely flattened and torn traffic cones and a man crashing his way through the cafe on the way to the parking lot with his cell phone waving in the air, presumably recording my crime for the benefit of the police. Now that was over 4 hours ago and I'm still a free man. No damage to my car, the grilled cheese sandwich was delicious, so in the end I guess I won. And I'm sure that this entitled jerk's Porsche is probably already restocked with fresh cones from his garage, ready to reserve his next parking spot that he feels entitled to. Wow, I will never understand anybody who acts this way. Like seriously, he tried to sit there and be like, "Oh oh, this is my spot, and trust me, if you don't listen to me, you're gonna regret it so much. Like, oh, what are you gonna do? Pull out the traffic cones and block my car in? Like, seriously, that's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, if someone did that to me, I think I would have done the exact same thing. Like, no one's gonna keep me in my parking spot all because he's like, no, that's my spot, I claimed it. Because that parking spot is literally not his. He can't claim it just because he's there every single week, and I can guarantee you he doesn't own that spot. So good for you for standing up for yourself and running over those stupid traffic cones, because that guy's behavior was completely unacceptable. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to AmITheJerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. I discovered that my neighbor is a con artist and has a criminal record that is incredibly long, and now it seems that he's targeting me by trying to drag me into one of his scams. And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, let me preface this by saying the following. I've already learned not to trust someone just because they're a senior citizen anymore, and to immediately look up someone as soon as I find out their full name, unlike what I've done in the past and in this situation. I know it was stupid of me, but please hear me out. For starters, I'm a 26-year-old female and I live alone in a side-by-side condo duplex, and next door is a group home for senior citizens. Currently, it houses 2 people, a man who's 65 years old and a woman who I think is in her 70s. But when it comes to this story, the man is who I want to talk about. I've been here for about 6 months, and the woman has been here for about 4. The man, I'll call him Steve, that's obviously not his real name, just moved in about 2 to 3 weeks ago, and when I first saw Steve show up, I greeted him and engaged him in friendly small talk conversation when I first saw him sitting on the porch. I do this with neighbors just as a way to develop a courteous neighborly relationship. These conversations just consisted of, hey, how are you doing and how's the weather? You know, stuff like that. It's honestly super simple. Well, that night, there was a problem in Steve and the woman's condo with the fire alarm, and the fire department had to be called. With my unit being attached, I had to wait outside on my porch until the fire department called for an all clear for us to go back in. We engaged in some small talk then, but honestly, it was nothing much. I think the most that came out of it was that I lent a chair for the woman to sit on since they had no porch furniture, and then I took it back at the end of the night. Nothing else really happened from there. The following morning, on my way in from my daily run, Steve was sitting on his porch and we waved to one another, and he told me he needed to show me what the fire department showed him to reset the alarms. Now, for reference, it was a false alarm, and they had to reset the system via the breaker box. Now, I found this reasonable enough, and he came down and showed me in the basement which fuse to switch, and I now know that this was a mistake. He kept talking and had brought a clipboard with a business card and a notepad on it, claiming to be a paralegal, and explaining that if any senior citizen I knew needed his service, that he was available, and that he could open up a trust fund for them as he was telling me. Now, I found this to be nothing I was interested in, so I just said, yeah, okay, and then he finally left. Well, a few minutes later, he knocked on my door again, asking if I could take him to go get his medication. And having taken 2 previous neighbors who were senior citizens to go get their medications at my last apartment that I lived in, I thought nothing of the situation. I felt compassion for him and I agreed. He then told me that it was in a city that's about 20 to 30 minutes away from where we're at right now. Well, I agreed anyways, feeling bad for his lack of transportation and his heart condition. Now, on the day of, I drove him there without any kind of issue. We ended up talking about some things that we had in common, and I truly find it interesting, enlightening, and fun to talk to mature folks because they have wisdom and knowledge that only comes with experience. We talked about things that were on a deeper level than small talk, but it wasn't anything super intimate. No super personal stuff, just anecdotes about our lives and our mutual interest in what we like to learn about. Stuff like science or philosophy, etc. There was nothing in it you could walk away from the conversation with saying something like, yeah, I really know this person's whole soul and personality. I helped him run a few more errands that day, including the bank and library close to our homes. And when we returned to his house, he asked me inside to meet his roommate's new puppy. And honestly, it was all good. Fast forward and a few days go by, and Steve asked me to take him to the library. And I'm thinking he means the very same library that we visited close to our houses a few days ago. So I just agreed. He wants to look something up on the computer, and once we're ready to go, he drops it on me last minute that he actually wants to go to the library that's again 30 minutes away. And before we leave, he is talking about the trust fund thing again and gives me documents and a DVD about how a birth certificate is really a government bond that will allow you to open up $1 million trust fund to pay for your expenses. Now, I'm not stupid. I know this is a scam. And at this point, while I'm waiting in the car, I look up his name. And this man has a criminal record longer than a grocery receipt. And most of it is identity theft or related to it. So I decide to say screw it. I'm not signing or agreeing to anything, and he's not a violent criminal, so I'm fine. And I take him where he wants to go. While we're there, he insists that I need to read whatever it is he's looking for on the computer, and this isn't just any library. It's a university law library. I have no idea what I'm even looking at. I only agreed to take him, and now he's insisting that I need to study this stuff with him about laws. Almost as if he's looking for his new partner in crime. I don't know. We leave after 20 minutes, and he finally found what he wanted, and he ended up emailing it to himself. On the way back, he says to me, "Well, if we keep coming back here, you won't need a GPS to know the way home," and kept going on and on about opening that trust fund up for me. And you know what? I just laughed awkwardly. I didn't know what to say at that point, and I just thought that if I could get through this day, I wouldn't have to talk to him again, and he would probably be normal about it. But I mean, I can't hope for that, can I? After all, we weren't intimate and we aren't friends. We were just neighbors, and he needed to go somewhere, so I drove him for some errands. You would think he would understand that. We went back and forth for a few minutes about how he was going to print his paper that he found at the library, and I told him to email it to me and I would print it. I mean, he pressured me and insisted that he didn't know how and that he needed to come back and print it himself. And yes, I know, something bad could have happened, and this is where I extremely messed up. I mean, go ahead and just tell me. But that's exactly what he did, and when I followed him out, I locked the house. And after that, I planned to never talk to him again, at least not on the same level, because this guy was doing way too much. The following day, I gathered all his phony documents and DVD in a grocery bag, and I left them on the door of their apartment. I just felt all too uncomfortable, and ignoring a gut feeling has never got me anywhere good. Well, it turns out I was correct. He knocked on my door asking if he could come in and show me something on my computer, but I said, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm really busy right now, maybe later," hoping the slow icing out would work. Later, I found a note on my door that was 5 pages long and handwritten, all about how offended he was that I didn't let him in my home. It included lovely things like, "Oh, when I knocked on your door, I noticed you were all moody. I don't have time for little moody matters, and it had me feeling a different kind of way." He also said, "When I encounter a situation such as the one you put me in, I can sometimes stop my heart condition from fighting somebody." He also said some creepy things like calling me a good girl and that I just need to remove some baggage in my life. He then asked me for my full name and phone number, while also spouting off some weird stuff about the Bible as well as me finding a mate. Well, needless to say, I took this to the police and they recorded it just in case something else happens. I've been avoiding him since then, but I don't want to feel like a prisoner in my own home. I mean, I was here first, and I don't have the funds to move, and I don't owe him access to my house, even if he's been in it before. I don't owe him to even talk to him or take him anywhere. Well, today he was sitting on his porch, and when I came home from running errands, I clearly wasn't making eye contact after his creepy note. He asked how I was doing, and I said, "Good, how are you?" And I said it rather shortly. He then said good and asked if I had plans for Labor Day weekend, and I told him yes. Then he said have a good day, and he went immediately inside after I did, and it felt like he was waiting for me to get home. The whole conversation was really tense, and he had a tone of voice that signaled that he felt like I owed him something. So I'm honestly never going out of my way to help anyone like this ever again, because this situation was incredibly creepy. Wow, this is a lesson you do not need to learn the hard way, people. Seriously, I don't care how neighborly somebody is, or how sweet and nice they are regardless of their age. If you don't know them, don't give them a ride. Like seriously, if you don't know anything about them and you know very little about them, just stay away from them until you figure out what they're about. Like this original poster absolutely put their life in danger. Like I'm completely convinced that they got lucky and that this guy very easily could have hurt her in a lot of different ways. And it sucks because it sounds like they're a good person, but seriously, you need to put lines in the sand of like, okay, this is what I'm not gonna do. And interacting with strangers like this where you let them into your home and you give them rides all over the city and all this other stuff, like that's out of the question. Because then you go from being a good person to being a foolish person. You're no longer doing a good deed by helping out someone like this, and instead you're intentionally putting yourself in a bad position, all because you're too afraid to say no. Like, my God, did they get lucky? This is seriously a scary situation. So in my opinion, I think you either need to make it very clear that you do not want to talk to this guy, or just straight up ignore him altogether. Like, this might be a good time to just be rude and completely ignore him. Not to mention investing in some kind of like doorbell camera, because this guy is a known criminal, and this is definitely not someone that you should ever take lightly. Am I the jerk for rescuing a cat from a neglectful owner and refusing to give her updates of any kind, as she has slowly become very weird and very obsessive? And at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Last year, I met a girl on Bumble BFF, and for the sake of the story, let's call her Lisa. We didn't really click and I had my own stuff going on, so things just didn't go anywhere. The only thing that we had in common was that we were from the same culture and we both like cats. A few weeks later, she told me she found a tiny kitten on the street and decided to take him in. Now, I would get updates from her now and then, and everything seemed fine until about 6 months later when she started posting everywhere that he needed to go as soon as possible. Her post was heartbreaking. She listed all these reasons why she couldn't keep him. He was biting and was aggressive. He was messing up the litter box and destroying her stuff. She said the smell was unbearable, and with her chronic pain, she just couldn't handle him anymore. My heart went out to the little guy, so I decided to step in. I've rescued a lot of cats before, so I knew that I could help. I reached out to my best friend who works for a vet, and we made a plan to get the kitten out of there and into a foster home within a week. So we picked him up, and I let Lisa know that he was safe and doing well. But when the vet checked him out, they found he was terrified of people and had some bruises, suggesting that he might have been mistreated. I didn't want to confront Lisa about it since the cat was out of that situation, so I just gave her vague updates. And that's when things got really weird. Lisa started asking for my friend's contact information to get updates directly. I told her that wasn't possible, but she wouldn't drop it. She sent me a bunch of messages saying it was weird that I wouldn't let her talk to the person who had her cat now. Well, after that, I blocked her, but she kept coming back, even using a burner number to try and get the vet's information because supposedly she had a new kitten. Now, I had had enough, so I finally just told her off. I pointed out that if the first cat was really her baby, she wouldn't have been so desperate just to get rid of him. I also mentioned that the vet found signs of mistreatment, which explained his behavior. I told her she shouldn't have any more pets until she can get her life together. Well, she got defensive, denying everything and blaming her family if anything happened when she wasn't around. So I just blocked her again and I tried to move on. But then things got even messier. My fiance received a flirty message from someone which he blocked, and then I got a direct message from Lisa's friend. It was a nasty message accusing me of being a weird jerk for claiming that Lisa, with her back issues, was mistreating the cat, and the whole thing was just meant to insult and provoke me. So here I am, wondering if I'm the bad guy in this situation. I was just trying to help the cat, and now it's turned into this crazy drama with Lisa and her friend. So am I the jerk in this situation? What should I do? No, you're definitely not the jerk for obvious reasons, but also I think the only reason Lisa is like reaching out to you and the vet is because she doesn't want to get in trouble for mistreating that cat. Because in my opinion, that is most likely what was going on here. And in my opinion, this kind of reads like she was trying to save face instead of like looking out for the cat. So no, you're not the jerk. And if anything, I think you definitely did the right thing because Lisa is clearly not a good pet owner and she had no business having this cat or her current cat in the slightest. Would I be the jerk if I decided not to let my housemate's boyfriend live with us? Because right now, this is a massive decision in my life. And at this point, I'm seriously unsure of what to do. Here's what happened. So I'm a 29-year-old male and I'm sharing a house with two flatmates. Let's call them Lucy and Annie. Lucy has been here from the start and Annie and I are quite new here. Now, Lucy is in a long-distance relationship with her boyfriend of 2 years and he's from India but currently lives in another country, which is closer to where we are. His visa is expiring, so they're going to get married in November, which Lucy didn't tell us about. Well, here's where it gets tricky. They want to move in together, so Lucy asked us if it would be fine if he moved into her room in 6 weeks. Now, Annie doesn't really have an opinion on it, and she's too stressed out right now to think about it, but I am absolutely against it. I really don't like being around lovey-dovey couples. It makes me extremely uncomfortable, and I'd like to be in peace while I'm at home. In fact, all of my friends recommended me to not do it since living with couples is apparently a crappy situation to be in. So tomorrow we'll have a meeting to discuss how to go on. But unfortunately, it gets trickier. Lucy said that if we didn't accept her boyfriend moving in, she would probably move out and find something else for them. But she owns 90% of the stuff in this house, so Annie and I would have to redecorate, and I would be fine with it, but Annie seems kind of scared of that, so she might move out as well if Lucy moves out, and then I would need to find 2 new flatmates. Now, you might be asking, why would he move into her room at all? Well, it's because our city is extremely crowded, and finding a flat is near impossible, especially since Lucy doesn't make that much money, and her boyfriend won't be able to get a work permit, and if he can't move to our country, they'll probably send him back to India. So as of right now, these are the scenarios. The first scenario is I say no and Lucy finds another apartment. She will then either have to move out of this one, which is really beautiful, or let her boyfriend be deported to India, and Annie might move out too. The second scenario is I say no, and Lucy doesn't find another apartment. She stays here, she'll be mad at me, and her boyfriend gets deported to India. The third scenario is I say yes. Nobody is mad and the rent gets cheaper for me, but I would have to live with a couple, which would be honestly a nightmare for me, and I would be exposed to their fighting and all their other issues going on. Maybe I'm not the jerk because I would just be standing my ground, and honestly, it's not my fault that they planned his immigration so badly. But on the other hand, I might be the jerk because standing my ground will put Lucy in quite the situation. What should I do? Honestly, this is one of those things where you really need to weigh your options, because if you say no, it does sound like the boyfriend is going to be deported back to India, and also your roommates are going to go. So then you're going to be tasked with not only refurnishing the apartment, but also getting 2 new flatmates. So sure, for the sake of your convenience, you could say, no, I don't want that to happen, but it makes me wonder how this boyfriend really is. Like, does this guy just suck completely and you just know for a fact he's a loser and they're just going to argue all the time? Or is he going to be a decent person and he's not going to be a problem in the house? Because if it's the second one, then honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with being like, okay, yeah, move in with us. But I do think that whatever you choose to do, you really need to think this through very carefully. Because while you are entitled to your opinion and you are looking out for your best interest, by saying no, you will dramatically change 3 people's lives pretty much overnight. And that, in my opinion, is a decision that I would not take lightly. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.